Okay.
Rabbi, have more?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. What I want to do today... No, definitely not. What I want to do today is take a look at a prophecy of Yeshayahu, the 5th perek of Yeshayahu. Some of you may know some of the ideas in which we call the song to the Vinyard, Shirat HaKerem, in which he gives an interesting mashal, which we'll go through in a second. But the idea that I want you to start thinking about as we start reading is the relationship between the Jewish people and God. And what I mean by that is often when we think about the Jewish people and God, if we think, for instance, in Shirat HaAzinu, let's say, or we think of high holidays, we generally have this assumption of a parent-child relationship or a master-servant relationship, right? In which we say the idea is, we talk about the idea being God is either Avinu or Malkenu. And these seem to be the two options for the Jewish people and their relationship with God. And what the Nevi'im do is they start talking about the relationship with God in a way that doesn't really exist in Torah, in a way that, for me, shifts how I process things in life. And I think if we take a look at this perek, we'll already be able to see what's happening. And hopefully, if we do a good job, we'll even be able to talk about the ramifications of this potentially new relationship between Am Yisrael and God. And I'll ask, in order to maybe to start the idea, I'll ask you like this. Generally speaking, who are the scariest enemies the Jewish people have had in Tanakh? Like, this throw out things. Amalek. Is Amalek really a scary enemy? Are we ever scared of Amalek so much? They're just there and annoying, and we have to maybe get rid of them. But I don't know if they're ever a threat to the existence of the Jewish people, right? The Philistines are a threat to the Jewish people. Maybe on some hand it seems to be the kind of, they steal our land, but like we could kind of live with them in some way.
Egyptians. So
the Egyptians, obviously. Who else do we have? When you think about them, the big enemies of the Jewish people. What? Assyria, Bavel, good. What do they have in common? Assyria, Bavel, Egypt. No, you're not going to get to Hashem. You got Shem, you got Ham, you got different people here. What do they have in common?
they don't want us to be powerful?
They're much stronger than us. Or, I put it in this different way, they're empires, right? There's a very different thing when you're fighting a local nation, Philistine, Ammon, Moab, Amalek, than when you're fighting an empire, okay? And I'm just gonna introduce that idea at the beginning to start thinking about it. Meaning, it's almost the equivalent. The equivalent would be like this, right? It's the difference between, I don't know, fighting a fight against Canada or Mexico versus fighting something against China, right? You're talking about two completely different scales of a battle. And the interesting thing is, when you talk about an empire, the empire doesn't care about you. You just exist as a little kind of speck. When you're talking about the Philistines and the Jewish people, they're like eternal enemies who are constantly fighting each other for hundreds of years, because neither of them is really strong enough to gain dominance over the other one. So you have your periods of up and downs, but they're not really bothering anybody else. They're not empires, right? And these are people who always bother you. I just want you to start thinking about these ideas, and I want you to, so one, the concept of our relationship with God, and number two, the difference between a neighboring country, and an empire. And start thinking about these ideas, and hopefully by the end of class we'll make some form of connection between them. But let's now actually take a look. What we're going to do, we're going to look at the first 7 Pesukim. Yeshayahu, who clearly was very poetic, but not just poetic, he was also very in tune with the physical landscape, and a lot of his imagery has to do with the physical landscape. He's going to give a whole poem here about a vineyard. So I'll read it very quickly. Right, Pesukim 1-7, you have the Hebrew and English, I tried to align it. But Yeshayahu starts talking and he says like this, Ashira na lididi shirat dodi lecharmo. He gets up in the middle of Yerushalayim, you always have to picture this thing, and he says, I'm going to start singing a song about my beloved to his vineyard. Who is Yeshayahu's beloved? Right, I mean, it's weird, right? That Rabbi is talking about, I'm going to sing a song about my beloved to my vineyard. Already, once you do that, what's the emotion that's already kind of at play here? And he's singing a song. When do you sing a song? Wax poetic. When do you do this? No? Nobody? What? When do you start waxing poetic about something? What? He's not just praising. He's there's romance. Good, perfect. No, I already see the word shiad. I see the word dod, right? Beloved. I have no choice, right? We're gonna get romantic about a vineyard. That's what he's telling us we're gonna do. And so he has a keren hayali didi bekena ben shaman, and I need to to read each of these words as like some romantic sense of wow, right? Like he had a beautiful spot for his kiddim. And then look at Pasuk Bet, and I want you to give me the sense of what's occurring in Pasuk Bet. I want you to get the feel for it. Vayazikehu, vayisakelehu, vayita'ehu sorek, vayiven migdal betocho, vagam yekev hatzev bo, vaykav la'aso anavim. What's happening here? Like, what do you get the sense of? Somebody who's what?
He cares about it, he's tending
attending, right? Like this, tending to it, very like physical touch almost, that he's very invested in this kiddim. And what is he hoping to do? He's hoping to get grapes from the vineyard. Now, we need to pause. We need to pause for a second and ask ourselves, is this something normal? Is this something that should be an emotional act?
No.
Good, correct, right? This is what we do, right? You go and you make some form of planting. This is what probably, when he's speaking to the crowd, how many people at the time of Yeshayahu probably have some form of experience in planting their own vineyard or something of the sort? 90% of the people, right? This is what they do for a living. And he's sitting there waxing poetic, talking about the guy's aspirations for his vineyard. And then, Vaya'as be'ushim. Okay, so what's weird? Instead of coming forth grapes, we have, that's a bad translation. Okay, wild grapes, whatever, right? Like, not usable grapes, you can't make wine out of them. What's weird? Normally, if I'm talking about somebody if I'm talking about agriculture, where does it go wrong? What?
It goes wrong when you don't tend.
Okay, when you don't tend to do it, so Sefer Mishlei Shlomo HaMelech will talk about the lazy person who doesn't tend to it. How else can it go wrong?
It doesn't bring forth any grapes.
Rain, right? Meaning, right? What never goes wrong? If there's rain, and if you tend to it, and if you have the right grapes, what's supposed to happen? It grows, right? So where is the anomaly here, or what's the factor that causes things to go wrong here? Where's the change? Where's the variable? It rained. He tended to it. He had good stock of grapes. Where's the anomaly? What? No. So clearly, what's he trying to say? Who's the anomaly? Who's the variable? What? Not God.
Grapes.
Not the grapes. Not the grapes, close, we're gonna close it. Not the plant. No, the plant that did everything he could. The ground, the earth. Right? The kedim, right? That's what he's talking about, right? And what's the sense? Now you ready? Let's get this. Okay, so what did the kedim do? What did the earth do to the, I don't know, the guy who planted the vineyard? What?
He rejected his.
I need a different word than reject. Good word, decent word. I need, but
Mistranslated.
not mistranslated, much harsher. Mistreated. Give me, guys, what?
Rejected?
Betrayed, right? I think, right? No, I think, right? Why do I have to use this word? I should use rejected, which is kind of normal. No, I have to use the word betrayed. Why do I need to use the word betrayed? Why is Yeshayahu forcing me to use this word? Right? There's this love, and he had this hope, and he was there, and he was invested, and then all of a sudden it's like a dagger to his heart, a betrayal that he doesn't even see coming, right? It's pretty weird, right? Good, okay. ועתה, ונדן, פסוק ג' יושב ירושלים ואיש יהודה שפטונה ביני ובין כרמי. I'm taking my vineyard to court. Why? Why is he taking him to court? What? He's suing him, right? Why is he so? When do you go sue somebody? Right? When there's this sense of like betrayal, wrong. Go sue him. Okay, what are you gonna do? And look at his claim in court. Okay, so there's something very odd that happens in this pasuk. What happens in this pasuk? What does he do? What does he call the vineyard? And I think this is very important. How does he call it? Meaning, there's a sense of betrayal. What else should I have done to? What should he say? What? What word should he say? And I think it would make a lot of sense. What word should he say? Ma la'asot od to the ground. Lakedim. I don't know. And what would be the next word you would expect? Not just ground, maybe saying in English, what else should I have done to this cursed ground, right? Almost, in a sense, right? Terrible. What did it do to me? Instead, what does he call it? Karmi, right? There's still a sense of life. And almost in his second half of the sentence, Madua kiveti la'asot anavim vayas be'ushim. What's he doing in that sentence? Who is he exonerating? Who is he giving off? Who is he taking responsibility off of? Why did I hope to make grapes and it came out not grapes? It's almost like he's saying, whose fault is it not? It's not the vineyard's fault. It was my fault maybe for having bad expectations, right? So too high expectations, maybe it's my fault. Really very odd, right? You seem to be very agitated at this vineyard, but yet when it comes to fully kill it, so to speak, right? And go for the jugular, you can't do it. And we'll send you back off. Okay. So now, he says in Pasuk Hey, and it's a fascinating Pasuk. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do to my vineyard. Again, we see that words. Hasen mesukatov ve'haya leva'ed paros gedero ve'haya lemermas and v'ashiteo batav lo yizamer v'lo ya'ader v'ala shamir v'shayid. What's he going to do? Basically, what's it in a different sense? What's he going to say? What's his response going to be to this vineyard? One of? Is he right? Is he active? Right? Or he's going to haser misukato. Right? They actually give you in the English here. I will take away its edge, but it doesn't say asir. It says its fence will get removed, and people will trample upon it. I'm gonna lay it fallow. I'm not gonna prune it. Right? Is he actively destroying it? Okay, no upkeep. Right? So I'm just gonna let it be. Now, who's he hurting when he does this? Good. Why is he? How is he hurting himself?
Because it's his vineyard that he loves.
It's him. Give me a different. Right. Okay. Right. He needs grapes. The guy needs grapes. Right. He's hurting himself. What are you doing? Right. You're hurting yourself. But you're not. So notice what he says. He's not going to destroy it actively, but he's not going to tend to it. Why not? Why don't you tend to it? You're hurting yourself, right? You're causing damage to your bottom line. You're not taking care of the thing that you invested in. Why can't he do it?
He's mad.
I'm not mad. Give me a different word. Either mad or in pain, right? I would say in pain, right? He's sad, mad, sad. I don't know. Either one I think works, right? But meaning you get the sense that he can't bring himself to do it, right? It's something like, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know this doesn't make sense. I know I'm hurting myself, but I'm too angry. I'm too hurt. Okay. Then there were 4 words I didn't read, right? All of a sudden, now again, Yeshayahu is talking. You're somebody. You're sitting there in the audience. What are you possibly thinking about this Navi who's coming and speaking romantically about a vineyard? What are you thinking?
Crazy.
That's out of his mind, right? And then he adds the words, I commanded the clouds to not rain upon it. What do you realize at that moment? Who are we talking about? We're talking about God. Okay, God is in the picture, right? You're in control of the rain and you're commanding on it. And then finally he tells me, and this is, by the way, a very nice thing, probably because it was so bizarre and so confusing, he literally has to spell it out to the people. Ki kerem Adonai Sevaot be'Yisrael ve'ish Yehuda neta sha'shu'av v'yikav le'mishpat v'hinei mishpach l'tzdaka v'hinei se'aka. Okay, so now let's talk about it for a second. What is in this parable, what does the vineyard really represent? Who is the vineyard? Bnei Yisrael. And who is the owner of the vineyard? God. What were the grapes? What? No. What are the grapes? What does he want? Look, it says the same word. Mishpat, right? Vayikav lemishpat. And for tzedakah, he wants tzedakah mishpat. V'hinei, instead, what's the bad grapes? Right, I think this one is great. Tzedakah, instead of tzedakah, what do you get? Se'aka, right? Clearly he's having fun. Mishpat, mishpach, he's having a lot of fun. They're switching around one letter and getting the opposite word, right? So you can maintain the poetic sense of it, right? So you have, God is saying in different words, what is he doing? He's investing in the Jewish people because he has hopes in them. And what does he want them to produce? Mishpatu tzedakah. Now we need to pause for a second. Let's take this back to something. What does this remind us of? Very clearly, that there's an investment of love. And God is saying, I'm taking the best in the hopes that it's going to produce mishpat tzedakah. Where is Yeshayahu clearly playing off of? Abraham. Good. Where? Who said that? Who's talking? Oh, there you are. Okay, I thought it was you. Right? Abraham and Setton, right? What does Hashem tell Abraham? Or Hashem tell us, the readers, during that time about Abraham? Ki yeda'ativ. What does the words ki yeda'ativ mean? Yeda'ativ, I know him. What does that mean, I know him? What? From what word? Give me an example when we use the word yada in the sense of love. Hadam yada havaisho, right? We use the word good, right? Yedativ leman asher yitzavet banav et beto harav v'shamru derech Hashem la'asot mitzedakah mishpat. So God has expectations. But if you're God, how can you view this relationship between you and Abraham, or between you and the Jewish people? You have 2 ways of viewing it. One is a transactional relationship, I mean, I need to say it like this, meaning one is you're making an investment in a relationship, right? You see what I'm trying to say? You could make an investment, and therefore, when you're making an investment, don't get too attached to it. Okay, you made an investment, it didn't come out, it's not going to produce the results that you want, so what do? Just let it go. Instead, God, what mistake did God make? I'll put it that way, right? In parentheses. What mistake does God make? He got not just financially invested, right? He got emotionally invested. And now God's stuck. So now God, he can't just walk away. So he's going to talk about the terrible things he's going to do to his vineyard. But how does he view it? At the end of the day, how does he view the vineyard? It's his. It's his. But it's so terrible that I can't give to it right now. So what's his solution? Is he going to punish the vineyard? He's going to let it fly, right? He's going to stop looking at it. He's going to stop going. I can't look at it. I can't deal with it because it's too painful. So therefore, I'm going to let be whatever happen. So what is God saying in a sense? So here you have the classic Hester penny. But I need you to think about what this means. This means Yeshayahu is turning to the people and he's saying, guys, we have a problem. God got too invested and now he's turning his face away. Does he say the word God is angry? He doesn't say the word God is angry. Does he say your sins are terrible and warranting of destruction? Doesn't say it. What does he say? God is too hurt to be invested right now. Meaning it's a crazy concept that you don't find in Torah normally. What do you talk about in Torah? Think of what we say every day in Shema. What's going to happen? What's God's response going to be? V'hara af Hashem. He's going to get angry, and then he's going to send you off of the land, me'ala aretz satova, because you're betraying him. But now God's not saying any of this. God is just saying, I can't be as invested right now. I can't give to you right now. Too much pain.
What does this tell us about providence? Is there a difference in understanding that for Yeshaya, is there there's an on-off switch that God can, stop intervening?
Hold that thought. We're gonna get that's the second that can connect to the second thing that we talked about. First, I just need to do something very quick in order to make sure that we know we're doing the right thing. We're going to answer that question, what does that mean, right, for all intents and purposes? And that goes back to the other question that we spoke about before. Think of the difference between empires and local nations who you're fighting with. Okay, now, just look at how he continues the idea very quickly in Pasuk Tet and Yud, for instance. Yeshayahu now stops the parable. He already told you what it means. Now he continues speaking. And he says like this, Hui magi'i bayit bebayit sadeh b'sadeh yakrivu ad afetz makom hu shavtim levadechem b'kerev haaretz. What is he talking about? He's talking about people who just move the, the property markers, right? They just move them over and over, and you have the more powerful people on either side of the person they're trying to, knock out. And they just move the property boundaries over, and they bring their two houses closer together. What do they do in the process by bringing their two houses closer together?
Push out the middle guy.
They push out the middle guy, right? So that's what it says. Now think about it for a second. If you had to talk about the greatest aspect of equality in Torah, from a financial perspective, what's the greatest mishpat ustakad that exists from a financial perspective in the Torah? The idea that every single Jew has inherently a nahala, and not only that, you can never lose it. You sell it, it's going to go back to you. Everybody is always starting off equally. So what did these guys do? They just ruined it for all eternity. You just move over the property marker, and every so often, the other person just loses more and more of his land. It's not his land anymore. His land just got smaller. Nothing happened. He didn't sell it to get it back. He just doesn't have it anymore, right? And these people who are completely opposed to the ideas of mishpat ustaka, and Hashem, telling them that we have a terrible problem, and they're going to get back what they did. If you look at Pasuk Yud Aleph and Yud Bet, it talks about the people rise up early in the morning that they may follow strong drink, tarry late into the night until wine inflame them. And the harp, and I don't even know what these words are, right, in their feast, and they do not regard the works of Hashem. What are we talking about here? What is this? Why is this connected to the previous statement? Why are these people going to parties all day?
They have power.
They have power,
Wow.
and so they have the money. Okay, good. So they have the money that they stole from the other guy, good, and they're able to fuel their party. And what don't they have? A sense of consciousness whatsoever. I don't want to say fear of God even. There's some sense of consciousness that while I'm doing whatever I'm doing, there are many people who are not doing, right? And what do they call that? Po'al Hashem lo yabitu ma'aseh adav lo ra'u. What is Po'al Hashem and ma'aseh adav? What is the work of God or the operations of his hands? What are they talking about? What Po'al Hashem would get you not to be drunk and not to be having parties from morning till night? Who's the Po'al Hashem? What? Which one? Right, the one who's suffering, right? The one who stole their land. You're not looking at people, right? That's what God wants. So all these ideas of what's going to happen, right? I'm going to skip these Pesukim and I'll get to the end. All these ideas are a continuation of what Yeshayahu means when he's talking about that there's not mishpat in the Jewish people. If you want to know exactly what he means, he then goes and spells it out, meaning he doesn't just exist and suffice himself in giving the mashal. He gives them very concrete behaviors that reflect their lack of consciousness of mishpat and tzedakah whatsoever. Now look what happens. Look at the punishment, and this we're going to start getting to Ronnie's question. Okay, I'm going to turn the page, and notice I just brought you, I didn't want to bring the whole perek, but I just brought you from the end, from Pasuk Kafeh, so Pasuk 25. I'm just going to read these Pasukim, read them in English so you get the idea. Al ken hara af Adonai be'amo, vayet yado alav vayakehu, vayigezu ha'arim, vatihi nivlatam kesuha b'kerv chuzot, v'chuzot l'shav apo v'od yado netuya, v'nasa nes l'goyim merachok, v'sharak lo mikzeh ha'aretz, v'hinei mehira kal yavo, and ayef and koshelbo, lo yanum v'lo yishan. Now pause right there, maybe so we get the idea. Lo yanum v'lo yishan, where are we familiar with these words from? Right, Tehillim. Who's lo yanum v'lo yishan? God. In this context, who's lo yanum v'lo yishan?
The enemy army.
This enemy army that doesn't, and ayef and koshelbo, that doesn't get tired. They don't rest. Lo niftach itzor halatzav, lo nitak sruchna alav. Asher hitzav shirunim, they have arrows are sharp. Kol katzesutav diruchot, their bows are all bent in the right way, right? Their horses and their wheels, everything, they have a fantastically polished army. And then they're going to come, and then he ends his prophecy. V'hinei hoshech sad v'or hashach. And this enemy that's going to come is just going to bring about darkness. You never have a prophecy until now that's talking about such a threat of a different type of army. Meaning, to put it differently, you're not dealing with local armies who, generally speaking, are kind of like militias, who don't have enough weaponry and don't have enough, whatever you need to go fight a war. They don't have enough supplies in the right way for the soldiers to fight. You're talking about a professional army, and that's the idea. They don't get tired. They don't slumber. They're professionals. This is what they do. They know how to do this, which basically back then doesn't exist. They're fully equipped, and they're coming for you, and this is going to bring about darkness. And all God needs to do is what? If you go back to Pasuk 26, God is going to whistle to them from the end of the earth. Right? God's just going to say, hi, here, we exist, come. This is the first mention that you're going to have of an empire, right? And that's, I think, the difference between an empire and a local army. You're talking about somebody whose armies exist in order to go and conquer. The Jewish people, until the time of Yeshayahu, for as long as they were in the land of Israel, which is about, at this point in time, somewhere about 700 plus years, they've never encountered the threat of an empire.
You wouldn't say Aram was as...
So I don't think so. If you look at Aram, right, and you look at the stories that, hey, he defeats them, they win the war, he had 32 kings with him, which probably he just collected all the various states of Aram, but Ashur is going to run through Aram in 10 minutes, right? So all of a sudden, right, Aram and Israel are kind of like evenly matched, and Ashur just comes and blows them all out of the water, right? We're talking about the coming of Ashur, that's the first empire. He's going to exile the 10 tribes. Then they're going to get caught up between a war between Ashur and Bavel is going to come and ultimately exile and destroy the Beit HaMikdash. And from then on, the Jewish people find themselves, we're always under the construct of some form of empire, whether it's Greece, whether it's Rome, and we talk about these exiles that we have that come about because empires exist, as opposed to these local nations who fight you, and sometimes they're a little bit stronger than you, and they cause you a little bit of trouble, and sometimes eventually you grow out of it and you push back at them. And this, I think, Ronnie, is the answer to your question. What is God talking about when he says, I'm going to withdraw from the Jewish people? Yeshayahu is giving us the answer of what he's going to mean, that I'm going to withdraw from the Jewish people. You're going to encounter forces that by all natural means, you're not going to be capable of withstanding anymore. You're going to need something miraculous to happen in order to somehow gain some form of independence. And when you do, you'll celebrate by a miracle. And you'll have Hanukkah. Or the Roman Empire, the only way you got back to the land after 2,000 years only because they let you go back. And Paras, Persia, only let you go back. You never go back independently anymore. You're never going to be able to say, oh look, my God is greater than your God. He's not there. It doesn't look like it. At no point in time do you ever see such a concept going on in history again. And what happens, if we're reading this correctly, is that we're talking about a watershed moment in the relationship between God and Israel. That specifically when God is starting to introduce himself as a lover of Israel, as opposed to a father, or opposed to a king, now he's also capable of walking away. And now you're going to be able to encounter threats that you've never encountered before. And you're not going to have a king, and you're not going to have a father who's going to save you. Think about that for a second. What happens? What does God do by shifting the dynamic of the relationship? Right? You say, oh, it sounds exciting, right? God is saying, we're spouses and you betrayed me. So therefore I'm too hurt. A parent doesn't have that luxury. A melech and his subjects doesn't have that luxury of walking away. But somebody in a relationship of two people who are beloved and you hurt them enough, then they're going to walk away. So all of a sudden, right, what seems to be a beautiful pedic about talking about the love that God has for the Jewish people is also a pedic in which God is able to give himself license to start walking away. So that's the first thing that I think is fascinating, that normally I don't think we think about.
Do we idealize one version of God's involvement more than the
Okay.
other?
Okay, so you ready for this? What period specifically, and this I think is important, do we talk about God being a father?
Pastor?
The midbad, right? What do we talk about the midbad? You're not doing anything, and God is going to provide for you like a parent does to a child. Right? Right? And there's this relationship that's very, very dependent, in which you're not exacting any sense of free will. God's taking care of you. Okay? What's my expectations at that point? very little. You're going to complain like a child, and God is going to deal with it like he's dealing with a child. Okay, fine, here, go, right? And you get the sense, right? We just read these parashiyot the past couple of weeks of Sefer Bimidbar, where I think that relationship is very pronounced, right? And God, by the way, God literally says, when he's talking about that period of the Midbar. And then we elevate someone. And we get to this relationship in which God has expectations from us. So he's no longer our father, but now he's our king. And we're supposed to be his servants. And we're avadev, serving the king and doing something for the king. And again, and when it comes to that type of relationship, God, anytime something's going to happen to the servants, now God cannot be served. So God has to protect them. And God has to take care of them. And all of a sudden God says, no. We're not doing that anymore either. Now, I'm going to hold you responsible like an equal. I have expectations of you. I'm going to invest in you. I need you to respond to me. And I'm going to talk about the words of hurt and betrayal and the sense of a relationship of equals. That now, okay, I could still have those feelings, by the way, but I need to walk away right now. I need you guys I need the hurt and the pain to simmer, and I need to come back to it when it's not there. So I need you guys to figure it out in the meantime, but I can't help you. And all of a sudden, history changes, and we start talking about all these forms of empires that are going to attack the Jewish people, which I don't think you could ignore the correlation. What's the way of God walking away? You're going to be dealing with things that are overpowering, that you're not capable of dealing with, and you don't have the God thing on your side to help you naturally overcome them. And you're not going to, it looks like God is not there as he walked away. So, on one hand, if we talk about it from that way, if you're asking if I value the relationships, there's definitely a sense of God is less involved. But on the other hand, what it does as well is it's going to create much more responsibility on the hands of the Jewish people. That they need to create a situation in which God no longer feels the pain and wants to come back. So now, within the destruction, you have opportunity. What do you got, Jacob?
Would you argue that when he originally enters a covenant with Abraham, or, Abraham being the first one, that really is the intention? It does come off as somewhat, more equal than it does. So I would almost argue maybe it is idealized what we see later on that sort of empowers the people.
So I'll put it this way. If you want to think about it this way, our relationship, we don't call ourselves Bnei Avraham, right? We call ourselves Bnei Yaakov or Bnei Israel. The relationship with Avraham, which is the first one, might be the ideal one, but we actually have to get there. And I don't want to, I'm trying to play it on my brain right now of how you could talk about the different relationships of the Avot each have with God. And obviously the idea would be you would put the Melech as one, and you'd put the father as another one, and then Abraham is the equal, the beloved. Which probably, if you think of the stories of Abraham, it's probably easy to work out in a way, but not for now. Yeah.
Is it possible that this is more like a Maimonidean way of framing it? God never changes, and the way he interacts with the world doesn't change, but the way we perceive history, right, the way you want to describe Abraham discovering God, the way you want to describe Israel as relying on God in the desert, or when empires rise, the way you want to describe God abandoning, quote unquote, the nation, you use different metaphors, and the language changes, and the way you describe the relationship changes. But God doesn't actually change from being more of a king figure.
So good. Meaning from God's thing, we could say he's not changing. But what needs to change is the relationship and the view we have of our relationship with God, right? And that could definitely change. And what I mean by that is if you take the summation of what we're saying, there's a sense of now, especially when you start talking about the 3 weeks, and you start feeling the ramifications of God's decision to remove himself. And God is basically telling you, I'm removing myself, but this is the relationship that I want to eventually get back to. it changes the equation, because it's not enough for me to then go serve God as somebody who is a child serving a parent, or a servant serving the king. But rather, my obligation now becomes, and this is what I care about, as somebody who's going to be God's partner. And to ask yourself, what is the ramifications of going to be God's partner? And this, look at what Yeshayahu is talking about. Look at your society. You have to shape your society. You have to take responsibility for it, and you have to make it in an image that's worthy of God, right? That's literally his message of Mishpat Ustaka. Or we could talk about, if you want to go back to where we started, you could talk about Abraham, how Abraham always serves as God's equal, to the point where God tells Abraham, Hitalech lefanai. And we contrast Abraham and Noah. I'll do it easier. When Noah does what God says, and Et Elohim Hitalech Noah, he's a loyal subject. But Abraham is not supposed to be a subject, he's supposed to be a counterpart to God. And by the way, it's funny, because if you think about it, whose spouse is the most counterpart to anybody in Torah? Abraham, right? She's never agrees with anything he says, right? And then she ends up winning, right? So when you think about it that way, his relationship with his wife is supposed to mirror the relationship he has with God, in which he's Hitalech is walking in front of. And by the way, play this out with the relationships the other Avot have with their wives, and you could probably make the same claim about their relationship with God as well, right? But somebody got, actually, I'm not saying I did it, so I'm saying do it, but I think it could work, right? So when you think about it in this way, right, it creates a much stronger sense of responsibility. Because you're saying, I'm not waiting for God to come and do hocus pocus. That's not how the 3 weeks end, or in different terms, that's not how the galut ends. I am not sitting and waiting for God. I have to become an active partner with God, and I have to step forward and take action in order to merit being a partner with God. And that means God is not ending the 3 week period, the period of the Hodban and the period of the galut, but we are. And then God will empower us by coming back to us and being our equal and rewarding our efforts and ensuring that our efforts endure and last. But we have to take those steps if we're going to be a partner, as opposed to being a servant or a child and waiting for God to do things for us. So I think it's a very important dynamic to shift, right? And to put the theology aside, right, when we talk about from God's perspective, but to focus on our perspective. And all this is being told to the people here through Yeshayahu's Mashal. When you go back to it and you think about the terms of love, and God is waiting, but there's only so much he could do until the Kerem, the vineyard, does something to show God that the Kerem is as interested in a relationship as God is. And that's what we need to do. We need to show God we're as interested in that relationship, and that starts by the way we create our society and the active role we're going to take in order to make the world in which we live a better place based on Mishpat and Staka. Good day.